Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Aquarian Mind podcast. Today's podcast, episode number 294. I'm your host, Jamel Crothers. It's Book Insight Friday. Today, I'm delving into a book that I read and just finished a couple of weeks ago. And it took me some time, but because of all the projects that I'm working on and, writing and podcasting and all that good stuff, this book called Real American, which is a memoir by Julie Lythcott-Haims. It was very impactful and powerful, and I'm glad I read it in increments. I'm glad I read it like 2 days a week, and I spent a lot of reading of this book at the pool because that's where it's quiet. I'm by myself, and it's like mid-afternoon on a Thursday or Friday, and that's when everybody's working. So the joys of being able to go to the pool on a lunch break on Thursday and literally having the pool to myself till about mid-afternoon on Friday. Anyway, let's delve into this book. This book is about this author, and she shares her life journey from her childhood into adulthood, growing up as a biracial child of a British white mother and an African-American Black father, and how race and microtransgressions of things going on in life and growing up in the 70s in the Midwest, where she was one of the very few Black children in a predominantly white neighborhood and white schooling that she dealt with, and being called the N-word, being asked what is she, which basically means what is her race, because her skin is of a darker tone than the white kids that she was going to school with, and how a lot of things that happened in her younger years caused a lot of insecurities within her, to where she went through a huge healing journey as an adult. And she was called the N-word in high school, and it was something that she never spoke about openly to her parents or anything like that. It was something that was kept in until she penned this wonderful book that really tackles a lot of racial issues that still permeate and infiltrate our society today. She's gone on to be a best-selling author of Real American and also How to Raise an Adult, and she's written a lot of other books. And there are a lot of instances that relate to me a little bit, me growing up biracial also. I am Brazilian, Italian, and Black. So for those who are listening to this podcast for the first time, I am very well mixed. On my mother's side is Italian, Native American, Indian, and Brazilian. And then on my dad's side, he is Black. Brazilian is considered Black or Latinx, if you want to go down that realm. But at the end of the day, Brazilians are mostly considered Black from American standpoints, but within their culture, there is the Latino aspect of it there. But this book was very powerful. It was very impactful. There are situations that correlate to my life, especially with the racial stuff that went on. I went to 2 high schools. I went to one high school in the inner city of New York City. I grew up in New York City, just for those who are new to the podcast. I was born in the Bronx and then lived in Queens for a while and then moved to the suburbs of Long Island. If you don't know New York is considered of 5 boroughs, and then there's Long Island, which is broken down into 2 counties. And then when you go outside of New York through the Bronx to go upstate into New York State, there are a myriad of other counties and cities such as Mount Vernon, Westchester, Plattsburgh, Oneida, Syracuse, Buffalo, Poughkeepsie, just to name a few of the major cities in New York State. But anyway, I went to school in the inner city, and then my sophomore year I transferred out due to some unfortunate bad circumstances that forced me to transfer out. And I moved into the suburbs, which meant I went from going to school with predominantly Black and Latinos from the young age of 4 or 5 years old to about 14. And then I transitioned to going to school with predominantly white people. And it was a culture shock. A lot of things changed. A lot of expectations changed from a schoolwork standpoint. The environment, things of that nature. I went from going to school in the inner city of, going through metal detectors to get into school to going to school where there was only 3 security guards within a whole high school. When I went to school in the suburbs, in the inner city, I had no locker at all. And I had to wear my jacket and carry my stuff around all day in high school in the inner city. When I went to school in the suburbs, I had my own locker from my sophomore year to my senior year. And my sophomore year, we had older lockers. Went away, we finished school. And by the time we I returned back for my junior year, we had a whole new set of new lockers, and they were all red, which was our school color, which was the Falcons. So that's a whole nother change in dynamic. But the point is that I did deal with some teachers who weren't too fond of me. They thought I was just another Black kid from the inner city, and I was someone who had to prove himself, right? So then there's that element. But what Julie talks about with her hair being curly and a little frizzy, it's different than her classmates, and people were enamored or, surprised by, the texture of her hair, right? So me, in my situation, I had grown out my hair in high school and I had a little fro going on, and there was this fascination with wanting to touch my hair, which made it very weird and very interesting. And then I also had a friend who had a much bigger fro and he would braid his hair. I wasn't in that phase, but people were enamored by his hair too, and people always wanted to touch his hair. I recollect that in high school because we had Spanish class together, and he was a year behind me, and he had a brother that was in the same grade as me. So certain little things like that made me think about what Julie went through compared to what I went through, in those instances. And then there's a lot of racial stuff that went on when she went to Stanford, which is a very prestigious school. She moved from the Midwest to the West Coast and was living in Palo Alto, California. She still lives in that area to this day with her husband, and a husband who is white and Jewish. And when she was younger, her Black father would always tell her, well, white boys will like you, but they won't date you. So that permeated in her head throughout her whole life. But she met her husband in school, in college. I forget whether it was undergrad or grad school, but I know that they did meet, in college. They got married in the early 1980s. They do have a son and a daughter. And, there's a lot of things she speaks on in regards to that, and how her son has more features of her and her daughter has more features of her husband, which is the father, right? So there's a lot of those elements in this book, and what it's like to be an American being a biracial child. And I wasn't always asked what I was from an ethnicity standpoint. People just assumed that I was Black. But, I'm going to school in the 90s compared to the 70s. For her, So the elements are different, right? She went to college in the 80s. I went to college in the 2000s. So the world had changed a lot in certain instances in regards to race, but not in every aspect in regards to race. So there were certain things she dealt with in college. There are certain things that I dealt with and experienced in college. When I went to college, I was around a lot more Black people and a lot more Latino people, but it was a predominantly white college that I went to, right? And it was a private school in the suburbs of, Connecticut. So, I did get that mix, but there are certain things that I do address, in certain books, in regards to my college experience, in regards to race, right? So the point is that this book is just really amazing. It's impactful. It's powerful. There was a lot of things that, Julie's mom said, in her younger years that she, went to battle with her mom, within the past few years about like, why did you say this? Why did you, not stand up, for me when I was younger, and, stand up to dad, things of that nature, because her father has unfortunately, he's no longer with them. But just a lot of elements, and she is like no holds barred, let it all out. And I feel like it was a healing journey for her. I did tag her to, on social media, on Instagram. I know I read the book and it was very powerful and impactful. And she said she wrote it for us. And when she said that, I knew what she meant, and as much as I would love to write a book about my life, I just don't feel the need to. But what I do in a lot of my books that I talk about on social issues, I do put certain elements of my life experiences into these books. Now, whether you catch on or not, that's a whole different story. But I do like to put certain elements of the way I think, the way I process things into my books, and a lot of my experiences have been put into books. Definitely some stuff in some of next year's books that I will be doing in 2024. I've written, a couple of chapters from My Book of a Black Man are relating to my life, the struggles and growth of a man. A lot of elements of the way I think are in that book series. So just know that I do drop little gems and little things about myself and who I am into a lot of the books that I write about. So just wanted to give you a little brief synopsis on Real American, a memoir by Julie Lythcott-Haims. I will leave the link in the description if you want to, take a look into this book. It's amazing. I read paperbacks. I'm not an ebook reader. I just feel like I'm an old soul who likes to hold a book in his hand. And that's why I have a nice little collection of books on my bookshelf in my apartment. Anyway, that is my book review for Real American. 5 stars. Amazing. Definitely worth a great read. Obviously, my books are everywhere except Amazon. You can find my books on bookstoread.com/Jamel Crothers. And you can check out whatever you want to check out. I have over 50 books at this point. TheAquariumMindPodcast.com is my website. If you are listening to my podcast on Spotify, Google, Apple, and all of those other great all those great platforms, please continue to do so. Drop me a voice message if you feel the need to on Spotify. If you listen to it on Spotify, love to hear feedback. Got a lot of great content coming for the rest of the month. So definitely stay tuned for that. Have a good weekend, everyone. Be good, everyone, and go accomplish your goals.